Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. So it's obviously a very successful project, and we've got loads of questions have coming in. Most of them are around research, and I'll read them out so everyone can hear those questions. But I'd like to begin, Sarah, with a question, and it relates to the citizen science approach. And you covered this in part. But what would well, first of all, why did you choose citizen science as an approach for this topic? And what are the benefits of using citizen science over other approaches?
Well, there were two reasons. So one of the reasons was that the reason we felt that the reason why women's health was lacking and lagging behind was that the teams, the research teams were not diverse enough. Women were included in science or had the agency to ask research questions quite late. So we wanted to we really wanted to hear from society and the public what is like the most urgent issue as well. We had some ideas as well, but we didn't know if this is like something that people are sitting with. You didn't want to come up with something as well. But on the other hand, honestly, we also needed samples, and we couldn't get them just the average way. We wanted to have a broad view of people all over Belgium. And we thought maybe they could help us in a more participatory way, share it with each other, with their friends, make it more of an activity. And we were only looking for 200 samples, so we were really afraid that we wouldn't get to 200 samples. So it was with that idea that really could spread the news. And then thirdly is because we really wanted to break the taboo. And then when it's in a citizen science way, you have to actually communicate a lot. You have to involve people more. It takes more time than I think I maybe over the time probably wrote 2 papers less than I should have maybe as a scientist, but you get so much more in return. So I think these were some of the reasons we found important to do citizen science. I forgot your second question, sorry.
No, I think you might have covered it. One was why did you choose, and what are the benefits? Is the second one.
Yeah. The benefits were that we included people there as much as we could, their needs, let's say their needs for research. We still get questions. People say like, oh, you should really study endometriosis, for example. We try to have all of these open platforms or on events. You should look into menopause. We get emails from all the women like, oh, you haven't done anything on menopause yet, and so on. And for us, that's like, okay, like let's see how we can do this. Apply for a grant, set up a team, and so on. It takes a little bit more time, but we try to listen. And so I think we try to listen a bit more to the women.
So they really sort of push you or in a certain direction because you
A
listen to their
little bit, but we
responses.
also, of course, there's a lot of ideas that we don't further explore, but we look
Sure.
also into literature, we look at our own results, and sometimes we, let's say, like in this window or these 5 options, what do you think we should explore most? And if we have no idea at all, for example, something that came totally not from us was from women saying, oh, I don't know what kind of underwear, what the impact of my underwear is on my vaginal intimate health. And it's something that no one of our team thought of. And then we included it in our questionnaire, and then we saw like a small link, and then now we focus a lot on this underwear, on menstrual hygiene products, on all kinds of use, and we see some interesting results, and that's something that we wouldn't have done if no one suggested it. So we kind of see where we go. But we have also like a whole set of research questions and next steps going on, but they help us define it or choose which direction we go a little bit. Yeah.
And one last question for me, abusing my position as chair before I come on to the questions there. But do you get a sense there's maybe a greater buy-in, a greater commitment from the people because of the citizen science approach to it, because they are heavily involved in shaping what it is you're researching and asking?
That's true. I think there's even a study, I think the British Gut study, they looked into the reasons why people and the motivations why people participate. And they saw that one of the biggest reasons were altruism and solidarity. People do it not necessarily for themselves, but for altruistic reason for other women. Or just years ago, they wished it was there, or for their future, for each other. So the idea that you're helping each other, uniting, but also out of solidarity, oh, we're doing it together. It feels that that's a community building way that women do it as well, but also maybe there's also a little bit of a selfish point that I have, for example, when I participated in my own study, I was so curious to know my own results. I wished like to know, you never know this. There's a lot of, there are tests that are very expensive. They're like $150, 200 euros and so on. They're so expensive. It's not worth it I think, for me, I think it's not worth it to really to pay that. But being able to have a say makes you maybe more inclined um, to participate. But I think a little bit more the community helps you like, oh, I really want to be part. People had like a fear of missing out when we stopped the call. They were like, oh, I wish I was also part of it. So now when we have future projects, we get like so many registrations, but yeah, we have more smaller cohorts now. They're more specific with more criteria. So yeah.
Brilliant. I might come back to that thing about how you kept in contact with people and kept them on board, but I'll best go to the question. So here's a question from Sandra Paget. Did disabled women come forward, and did you approach them to come forward?
So we don't even always know if someone was disabled because we didn't have it always in the question. I think our first questionnaire was very focused because we also have to ethically show to our committee that these questions, to our ethical committee that these questions are very relevant for the microbiome. So for particular disabilities, it's not that we ask like, are you disabled and why? We would just focus on, did you have focus on specific physical conditions that are linked to the microbiome? However, there are some organizations in Belgium that focus on that really patient organizations that include disabled women, and this is some of our next steps. But it's for us always important: is it important to make the distinction or not if it's not necessarily microbiome linked? Otherwise, we'll be asking questions about people their whole lives, and maybe we don't see anything. But it's a good question. But I think we did get questions that people couldn't pick up their packages, for example. So some of these things, so that's why we have had everything delivered at home to really lower the burden as much as possible. It was not only for disability, but women with small children or older women. So that was at the first stage. It was one of our major costs, to be honest, to have everything delivered at home, which is also not possible in all countries, but it was in Belgium. Yeah.
Just following on from that, Sarah, it's just come to me. Is there potential weakness in a citizen science approach in that it's a self-selecting group?
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, and because I'm thinking like there are groups of people we know, and I think you touched on it a wee bit, that are seldom involved or participate in research. And is there a danger that it just becomes the people that've heard about the project and are self-selecting and maybe know that world better than others?
Yeah, definitely. That's why I don't tell everyone you should do citizen science. It depends on
Right.
research question and your goal. So in this first stage, we applied citizen science, but we have actually future follow-up projects that are sometimes very clear clinical studies that are not citizen science. But citizen science is not a population study. So it's not like we randomize select people in the country to participate. It's often women that are interested already in their vaginal health or women's health. It's women that maybe have an issue, want to get pregnant, have had a lot of infections. So they kind of self-select themselves. People that know of research at the University of Antwerp, people that we know, our own environment. So that's how it starts at first. In addition, it's women that have extra time, for example, or have the of understanding also from an educational level, understand immediately what is being said. So we try to diversify, to simplify our communication, to try different languages. One of the aspects that we saw is that we didn't have a lot of women living in poverty participate. So we had these in-depth interviews, and then we realized that of course, it totally makes sense when you're like, we had like single moms that had two jobs. Why would you participate for free in a scientific study, go out of your way to send your kid and take the sample? So from then we said, okay, why would you not participate, and why would you participate? And that kind of gave us a lot of lessons that maybe for these groups, financial contribution could be necessary, but for others it's not. So we try to tailor it, but it's good to always realize that you will never reach everyone, and to reach out to understand the group and then focus on them specifically. So for also focusing on not to stigmatize some people and so on. So it takes a lot of effort to do that. So that's why we do it more targeted. But our first call, I think, was not as inclusive as we wanted it to be.
Thank you, Sarah. Question here from Catherine Val. I think you said that 14% of eligible women in Belgium haven't had a smear test. So what age group are eligible in Belgium? So from what age can you start having smear tests in Belgium?
14, 14. I don't know the number. Maybe it's from the UK, but in Belgium, to get a smear test, you have to be, so you get a letter in the post when you're 25 to do your first test, and then if it's okay, you get one every 3 years. But they see there also that not everyone goes, and it's mostly like women from lower socioeconomic status or so, or levels that don't always follow up on these screenings. So they have to put also a lot of extra effort in explaining, because it feels like it's a government letter and it's stressful, and do I have to do it? So I think they can, we advise them at a certain stage on how we do it and how they could maybe get some more responses. But yeah, it's not always easy when it comes from the government and what is your goal and what do you want to do? Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, I've got a question here from Sarah Fisher. Do you suggest or record the stage of the menstrual cycle for the swab, or record if post-menopause?
Yeah, indeed. So we ask when their last, let's say, bleeding was, because not everybody understands the word menstruation. We learned that also from our advisory board. Is also good because sometimes you ask questions and people don't understand them and then they might answer wrong. So we first explain what is menstruation, what's your cycle, when does it start? So they really had to put in the date, and then we calculated the stage in the menstrual cycle. We also had already a follow-up project, a longitudinal project, where we followed almost 300 women over 2 menstrual cycles, and they took 6 swabs over the time. And for menopause, we also asked about their latest, or whether they felt they were perimenopausal. We're thinking for future menopausal studies that we need to be more specific, because menopause is not really clear. So this is something that we're learning along the way.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question here from Rachel Plachinsky. Are there any differences related to mode of birth?
No. So that we saw. So if you mean mode of birth, you yourself. So if you were born with a cesarean or a vaginal birth, we didn't see. And whether we did register whether they have given birth, but there we didn't see a big impact from the mode of birth, but we saw how long ago they'd given birth. So if you've given birth in the last 12 months, we saw that your microbiome was more diverse. And this is something that literature also describes, is just the action of being pregnant, even if you have a miscarriage or so. But the changes that your body goes through, you're, let's say, tainted for life. But you can see that if you would put a machine learning tool on it, you could a little bit more predict that someone has given birth before in their life. So we saw more diverse bacteria, less lactobacilli. It doesn't necessarily mean it's negative, but we could see something about that.
Okay. A question here from Ducor. From your perspective, which angles or approaches do you think are most important for future research on a reproductive tract microbiome?
That's a good question. I think for women's health, we need to do more looking into the underlying mechanisms. So of course, it's good to look observational. What is the microbiome? What does it look like? But to better understand. So if you look at the gut bacteria, gut microbiome, there's a lot of research done. It's good to better understand and deeper understand, why are these bacteria here? What do they do? What do they produce? How do they react to therapies? We also work together with, for example, women in having breast cancer. What is the impact of the cancer treatment on their microbiome? What I would say is definitely try to include vaginal microbiome research in other types of research. So that's because Isala, we are getting requests from other people say like, oh, we study this, but we are curious to know what the impact is of our product on the microbiome or of our treatment. And then we see that, oh, actually you do have an impact on your vagina, but also look more at the underlying mechanisms. Why is something the way it is? because then you can better understand it, better treat it. If it's, I think that's mostly.
Fantastic, thank you. And I've got one here from Richard K. And apologies for anybody, by the way, if I'm mispronouncing your name. It's not intentional. It's my ignorance. Any thoughts on spermicides affecting the biome?
We didn't see. I'm not sure even we had the question in our questionnaire, so I cannot correctly answer it. But we do know that if so everything external brought in the vagina has an impact. So we even saw an effect of sex in the last 24 hours. Just having sex had an impact on your microbiome. It's just because it's an external aspect that comes into its internal environment. So, but we haven't found this specifically in our data. But that doesn't mean it's not there.
Okay, and a question here from Elsie Makachaya. On one of your slides, you mentioned that assessing ethnicity wasn't intentional. Did you consider whether there might have been barriers affecting why some ethnic groups engaged and others did not, and what learning that could provide for future work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we didn't specifically ask about ethnicity. The reason why is we were a little bit when we looked at the studies in the US, they always ask Caucasian, Black, Latin American, Asian American. And for us, it was very strange as Europeans that we don't really classify people in the way they do it in the US. So we were thinking, okay, how, because a lot of the studies were like Black people had a vaginal microbiome like this, white people like this. So we were thinking, okay, how can it be most relevant? So what we did is we asked, we asked if they lived in another country in the first 3 years, because we know that the first 1,000 days are very important in your immune system and microbiome development. So we asked about the countries they lived in. We asked if they were in another country in the last 6 months. We asked whether their mother was born in a particular country and their father in a particular country, because it says we think a bit more about their upbringing. And then we also at the end asked which culture they associate most. But we didn't ask which ethnicity do you associate. So we just went around a little bit with the question, and eventually also didn't see anything, because my reason is also we don't know. They need more questions. You need to ask more. Someone just recently moved from another country, so that's something that we hope to do with the Sisterhood project, that we, for example, have women living in Cameroon, comparing them to women living in Belgium, have a Cameroonian woman go to Belgium, this whole change, what impact does it have? That could be really interesting. But we didn't believe in like the Black, Caucasian, and Hispanic categories from the US. And actually they're now retracting a lot of these conclusions, because they see that it's not because of people are Black, but sometimes it's because of the socioeconomic status or the neighborhoods that they live in. So that's why it's important to look at also socioeconomic status, other demographics, and not just ethnicity. Otherwise, we can quickly stigmatize. And then what we learned, we learned that we missed a lot of groups, and I think one of the lessons I put on a slide. So we learned that particular groups have other trust partners, how you work with intermediaries. It depends also. You cannot just do it for all ethnicities, but we focused on the Moroccan and Turkish women, which is a largest group that we have in Belgium. So my advice is, if you want to focus on a particular ethnicity, it's good to have like a small focus group or like in-depth interviews, work with ambassadors and organizations, and you can learn a lot.
And one last question for me, Sarah, and if you could be brief with this one, because obviously we need to wrap up in a moment. But for those of us here thinking about doing citizen science, what would be your key tip or key piece of advice you'd give us?
Oh.
Just boiling it down into one thing.
So I think for us, we did a lot of preparation, but at a certain time, you think you need to do more and more and prepare more, but you just have to jump, I think, and try it out and keep monitoring your impact and do feedback surveys and learn and look at your data, look how diverse you are. So be open to always learn. So I would just say, try it. And don't try to be too perfect about it, but really always think of is this necessary for me? I don't think for each research question you should necessarily do participatory research and citizen science. There are all kinds of research ways, clinical studies ways, randomized control studies, and so on. So always ask this question first, and then and maybe another tip is to really make sure that you have an enthusiastic and passionate team. It takes more than just being a researcher. It really takes someone being open to go a little bit above and beyond, to try to go on social media, to give talks, to write a blog post. Yeah, definitely try to look at, let's say, your team members and what their hobbies and interests are. So we would have team members, they say, oh, I don't like to give a talk or write, but I love to make a video. I like to work with audio. I like to work with podcasts. I like to write. I like to design. So depending on their interests, I would just say like, okay, then you're on the infographics and then you're on the video and something like that. Just, yeah, look at their interests and expertise. Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much. I'm going to bring the session to a close now. So, Ricky, if we could just have the closing slides, would be tremendous. Okay. So, first of all, obviously, I'd like to thank Sarah for giving us a really fascinating talk, and also thank Ricky Piper, who's organising these presentations and obviously is behind the scenes. And obviously, thanks to everybody that participated and came along today, listened, and indeed contributed such magnificent questions. Please, and we will send a recording, by the way, to everybody that registered for this event, so you'll have that recording. You can follow us. You can join the International PPI Network, first of all. There's the web link there. You can follow us on Blue Sky. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. You can tweet us as well on Global PPI Net. So next slide, Ricky. And just to let you know that coming up, we've got 2 presentations in December. We've got one from Silke Lipinski. She's going to talk about patient public involvement in Germany on the 8th of December. And we've also got a colleague from Ireland, Claire Reardon from the University, from the University of Galway. And on the 18th of December, the working title of How Do We Embed Patient and Public Involvement in an Organisation? So an organisation-wide approach to patient and public involvement. So that's wrapping it up from here. We will be in touch, as we say, to send you the presentation once we've edited the recording. And so, as I say, once again, Sarah, thank you so much today. Really enjoyed that, really informative. And I feel I learned and know quite a bit more now about citizen science. And thank you again to everybody that attended this presentation, and have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you very much.